Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. Vanished Earthship returns, now armed with impossible technology. Fleet Commander Zorl Vander stood, forearms crossed in a posture of distinguished contemplation, gazing through the panoramic viewport of Galactic Union Observation Station Epsilon 9. The vast emptiness of space, punctuated by distant stars, and the occasional transport vessel, had become as familiar to him as the ridges on his cranial plate. 27 cycles of service had taught him that space rarely surprised anyone anymore. Hey, what a cosmic joke that thought would prove to be. Commander. First Observer Ira's voice crackled through the comm. We're picking up an anomalous reading at coordinates 42,851.7. Energy signature unlike anything in our database. Vander sighed, uncrossing his lower arms to adjust his ceremonial sash. Probably another tourist yacht with modified engines. Send the standard warning end. Sir, the signature just exploded in scale. Whatever it is, it's... The rest of Ira's words were drowned by the station's proximity alarm. A blaring, pulsating sound that Vander hadn't heard outside of drills in over 15 cycles. By the 7 moons, he whispered, pressing closer to the viewport, where empty space had existed moments before, a vessel now hung against the backdrop of stars. Not just any vessel, a ship of unmistakable human design. The angular utilitarian aesthetics of Earth's early interstellar attempts were clear, but something was off. The hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen that seemed to bend light around it. Portions of the ship appeared almost translucent from certain angles, then solid metal from others. That's impossible, muttered Science Director Peller Ruak, who had rushed to join Vander at the viewport. She clutched her data tablet with trembling hands. That's the ETS Phoenix. It vanished without trace 83 cycles ago during humanity's first deep space expedition. Vander's mouth twitched in what his species considered a nervous smile. And now it's back, looking considerably upgraded. The station's communication panel chimed. Ira Kier's voice was higher pitched than normal. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the vessel. Audio only. Put it through, Vander ordered, his 4 hands instinctively moving to smooth his uniform. The voice that filled the command center was unmistakably human, but carried an odd resonance that seemed to echo slightly before and after each word was spoken. Galactic Union Observation Station Epsilon 9, this is Captain Mason Rivera of the Earth transport ship Phoenix. Request permission to dock. We've been away for quite some time. The casual understatement in the human's voice made Vander bark out a laugh despite himself. Away? They've been away? 83 cycles without a single transmission, presumed atomized in deep space, and they radio in like they're returning from a weekend pleasure cruise. Ruak was frantically analyzing readings on her tablet. Commander, you need to see this. The Phoenix is giving off energy signatures that violate at least 3 fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. There's some kind of field around it that's warping space-time itself. Vander's expression sobered immediately. Its species had evolved as cautious predators, and the instinct to recognize a superior threat was deeply ingrained. Whatever the Phoenix had encountered out there in the void, it had transformed the primitive human vessel into something that made every sensor on the station scream in confusion. First Observer informed Captain Rivera that permission to dock is granted, but under Protocol Omega-7. He turned to Ruak. Alert Union Headquarters. Highest priority. Ruak's inner eyelids flickered rapidly in distress. Commander, Omega-7 is reserved for first contact with potentially hostile advanced civilizations. Vander gestured toward the Phoenix with one arm while the other 3 remained tightly crossed. Look at that ship, Director. Whatever the humans encountered out there, whatever gave them technology that our brightest minds can't even comprehend, it's changed everything. The balance of power in the Galactic Union might have just shifted dramatically. He paused, watching as the impossible ship began a gentle approach toward the docking bay, moving with a grace that defied its bulky human design. And the most terrifying part, Vander added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, the humans are smiling as they return. What kind of species faces the unknown, disappears for nearly a century, acquires technology beyond comprehension, and comes back smiling? The docking procedure was, in Commander Vander's professional assessment, absolutely ridiculous. The Phoenix simply appeared inside the designated bay. No gradual approach, no docking clamps, no airlock procedures. One moment the bay was empty, and the next, The massive Earth vessel sat there as if it had always been part of the station's architecture. Did anyone else just? Security Chief Brahorden stammered, his defensive quills fully extended in alarm. Yes, we all saw it. Vander snapped, trying to maintain his composure. They teleported somehow through our shields. He forced his breathing to slow. Let's greet our guests. The boarding party assembled at the docking bay entrance. Vander, Ruak, Horden, and two armed security officers, whose nervous fidgeting suggested they understood the futility of their weapons against visitors who could ignore shields and physics alike. The Phoenix's airlock opened with a perfectly ordinary hiss. Disappointingly mundane, Vander thought. 5 humans emerged. They wore what appeared to be standard Earth expedition uniforms, though with subtle differences that were difficult to place. Their leader, presumably Captain Rivera, stepped forward, average height for a human, dark hair with streaks of gray, and a face that seemed simultaneously young and ancient. Commander Vander, thanks for the warm welcome. Rivera extended his hand in the traditional human greeting gesture. Sorry about the dramatic entrance. Our new propulsion system doesn't really mesh well with conventional docking procedures. Vander hesitantly extended his upper right arm. The handshake felt normal enough. Rivera was solid, warm, irritatingly ordinary. Captain Rivera, Vander managed, your ship was declared lost over 8 decades ago. Your return with technology that appears to be several centuries ahead of current Galactic Union standards requires some explanation. Rivera laughed, a sound that somehow preceded the actual movement of his mouth by a microscopic moment. Oh man, has it been 80 years? Time gets so weird when you're dealing with the architects. For us, it's been about, what would you say, Elena? A human female with short blonde hair nodded. 3 years, 2 months, 17 days, give or take a few quantum uncertainties. Ruak couldn't contain herself any longer. She thrust her tablet toward Rivera. Your ship is emitting particles that shouldn't exist. You've got some kind of dimensional fold happening across your hull. There's an energy field surrounding you that's reading as both there and not there simultaneously. Rivera smiled sympathetically. Yeah, we've been told our ship breaks a lot of rules now. The architects aren't big on maintaining conventional physics when there are more efficient options available. The architects, Vander repeated. Rivera gestured vaguely upward. That's what we call them. Not their real name. They don't really use names like we do. Well, I guess you could say they're the universe's original engineers. Chief Horden stepped forward, quills still bristling. Are you saying you encountered the mythical precursors, the supposed beings who seeded the galaxy with life? Rivera and his crew exchanged glances that could only be described as both amused and pitying. No, Rivera said gently. We're saying we encountered the beings who built the universe. The precursors live in a long-abandoned nursing home compared to who we met. A stunned silence followed, broken only by the soft, impossible humming emanating from the Phoenix. A sound that seemed to vibrate directly through Vander's skull rather than traveling through the air. Perhaps, Vander suggested weakly, we should continue this conversation in the conference room. Beyond comprehension. The conference room of Epsilon 9 had never felt so inadequate. Vander sat at the head of the oval table, flanked by his senior staff, while Captain Rivera and 3 of his crew occupied the opposite end. The 5th human, a tall man with auburn hair whom Rivera had introduced as Dr. Thomas Reyes, our chief scientist, was busy waving some handheld device around the room's perimeter. Just checking compatibility, Reyes explained, noticing Vander's stare. Sometimes our tech causes unexpected reactions with conventional systems. Vander nodded stiffly. Like how your mere presence has crashed our quantum computers 3 times in the last hour? Exactly. Reyes beamed, as if Vander had given the correct answer in an academic quiz rather than lodged a complaint. Your computing architecture assumes certain universal constants that aren't actually constant. Science Director Ruak leaned forward, her professional curiosity overriding protocol. You're suggesting fundamental physical constants can vary, not suggesting, demonstrating. Reyes tapped his device, and suddenly a 3-dimensional projection appeared above the table. But projection was the wrong word. This was more like a window torn into the fabric of reality itself. This is the Phoenix, Rivera said, gesturing to the miniature version of their ship hovering before them, or rather what the Phoenix looks like in conventional space-time. With another tap from Reyes, the image shifted. The neat industrial lines of the human vessel blurred and expanded, revealing what appeared to be additional dimensions folded into the structure. Parts of the ship seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, with corridors that twisted back on themselves in physically impossible ways. Security Chief Horton made a strangled noise. That's not possible. Yet here we are, the blonde human, Elena Novak, their navigation specialist, replied with a shrug. The Phoenix exists in 11 dimensions simultaneously now. Makes for really efficient storage space, actually. Ruak was frantically taking notes. But how did this transformation occur? What technological process could possibly? We got lost, Rivera interrupted, his tone conversational. That's the short version. The Phoenix was testing Earth's first attempt at an FTL drive. Something went wrong, catastrophically wrong. We got thrown way off course, beyond any charted region. The fourth human, a dark-skinned man with a neatly trimmed beard named Jackson Wells, picked up the story. Our conventional engines were damaged, life support was failing. We were drifting in uncharted space, broadcasting distress signals no one could possibly hear. But then they found us. Rivera continued, his eyes taking on a distant quality. The architects, they were curious. Humans had never reached that region before, never should have been able to reach it according to their models. Vander narrowed his 4 eyes. And these architects just helped you out of curiosity. Rivera laughed, that unsettling laugh that seemed to echo before it happened. Oh, they didn't just help us, Commander. They rebuilt us, ship and crew alike. A tense silence fell across the room. Explain, Vander demanded, his lower arms instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Reyes deactivated his device, the impossible projection vanishing. The architects exist beyond conventional physical limitations. They don't perceive time or space the way we do. To save us, they had to adjust us to survive in their realm while they studied us. You're saying they experimented on you? Horton growled, quills bristling again. No more than a marine biologist experiments on a beached whale by pushing it back into the ocean, Novak replied. They recognized we were dying and modified us to survive. The process just happened to include some significant upgrades. Ruak's scientific mind was racing ahead. You mentioned your subjective time was only 3 years. How is that possible if you've been gone for 83 cycles? Time flows differently where the architects exist, Wells explained. And the modifications they made to our biology mean we experience time flexibly now. Vander stood abruptly, his patience exhausted. Enough vague explanations. I demand a thorough inspection of your vessel and medical examinations of your crew. Rivera smiled, a gentle, almost sympathetic expression. We expected that request, Commander. We've prepared a version of our ship that your inspectors can safely navigate without encountering dimensional pockets or temporal inconsistencies. As for medical exams, he extended his arm across the table much further than human anatomy should allow, as if his limb was stretching like elastic, and placed a data crystal in front of Vander. These scans should satisfy your medical officer. We can't undergo conventional examinations anymore. The results tend to break your equipment. Vander stared at the data crystal, then at Rivera's arm as it retracted to normal proportions. What exactly did they turn you into? He whispered. Rivera's expression was unreadable. We're still human, Commander. Just more. More how? First observer Ira Keir asked, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. Rivera exchanged glances with his crew before answering. We're the first draft of humanity's next evolution. The architects didn't just save us. They used us as a template. They're fascinated by consciousness bound to physical form. By remixing our biology with their understanding of dimensional engineering, they've created something new. He spread his hands. We're still figuring out the full implications ourselves. Vander sank back into his chair. And the Phoenix? What exactly is it capable of now? That, Rivera said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, is what we're here to discuss. Because the capabilities the architects gave us, they change everything. For everyone. The inspection of the Phoenix was, to put it mildly, a complete nightmare for the assessment team. Engineering Chief Pran Nouvel reported, his tentacle appendages writhing in agitation. I'm telling you, Commander, the interior spaces don't match the exterior dimensions. We'd enter a corridor that looked 10 meters long, walk for 5 minutes, and still not reach the end. Vander rubbed his temple ridges. And the propulsion system? Nouvel made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. What propulsion system? There's a room where the engine should be that's just empty space. No, that's not right. It's not empty. It's nothing. Not even vacuum. Just absence. My instruments went dead when pointed at it, and technician Grawl swears he could hear colors when he leaned in too close. They were gathered in Vander's private office. Himself, Nouvel, Ruak, and Horton. The Phoenix crew had been escorted to guest quarters, though Vander harbored no illusions about their ability to contain such beings if they chose to leave. The medical data checks out, at least according to our computers, Ruek added, though I use the term checks out loosely. The human DNA now contains structures that fold back on themselves in mathematically impossible ways. Their cellular metabolism appears to draw energy from somewhere else. Dimensional bleed, Nouvel muttered. They're siphoning energy from another reality. Horton slammed his fist on the desk. They're dangerous. We should notify Union headquarters and request a containment fleet immediately. Vander held up a hand for silence. They've made no hostile moves. In fact, they've cooperated with our every request, bizarre as the results have been. The door chimed. Enter, Vander called. Captain Rivera stepped inside, alone this time. Sorry to interrupt. I sensed you were discussing our situation and thought I might provide some clarity. Horton's quills flared. You sensed we were talking about you. Are you telepathic now too? Rivera smiled apologetically. Not exactly, but the architect's modifications have made us sensitive to probability waves. I calculated a 94% likelihood this meeting was occurring, given standard Union protocols following a first contact scenario. Which is what this is, Vander realized. Not the return of a lost human vessel, but first contact with whatever you've become. You're receptive, Commander. Rivera took a seat without being invited, his movements too smooth to be entirely natural. But we're still human, just humans who've seen behind the curtain of reality. Ruak couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. These architects, what are they? What do they want? Rivera leaned back, his expression thoughtful. Imagine beings who evolved not in physical space, but in the mathematical underpinnings of the universe itself. The architects don't build with matter and energy. They build with probability, dimensionality, and the fundamental laws of physics. Gods, Nouvel whispered. No, Rivera corrected gently. Just very, very old. They've been refining the universe, tweaking its parameters, optimizing its constants for longer than organic life has existed. And they were getting bored, lonely, even in their own way. He gestured around the room. All this, the Galactic Union, the various sentient species, the flourishing of biological intelligence. It's a garden they've been cultivating. But they've been watching from afar, unwilling to interfere directly until we blundered into their realm. Until you blundered into their realm, Horton said. Rivera nodded. Our accident created an opportunity. By modifying us, by making us compatible with both biological existence and their mathematical reality, they created ambassadors who could bridge the gap. Vander studied Rivera carefully. Ambassadors, not conquerors. That's the crucial point, Commander. Rivera leaned forward, suddenly intense. The architects could have wiped out all biological life with a thought if they wanted to. They could rewrite the fundamental constants of the universe and make our form of existence impossible. He spread his hands on the desk, and for a brief, disturbing moment, Vander could see straight through them, as if Rivera's flesh had become transparent. But they don't want that, Rivera continued. They're fascinated by biological consciousness, by the emerging complexity that arose from the parameters they set. We're like beautiful mathematical proofs that wrote themselves. And what do they want now? Vander asked quietly. Communication, exchange, growth. Rivera's eyes seemed to shift color as he spoke. The architects have mastered the art of building universes, but they've never experienced emotion, art, music, humor, all the chaotic, beautiful byproducts of biological evolution. They've given us the ability to reshape matter, energy, and space-time itself, but we've given them something they consider even more valuable, which is, Ruak prompted. Rivera smiled, a genuinely human expression amid all the strangeness. Poetry, jokes, love songs, cuisine. We taught them about fictional stories and dancing and the concept of pets. They were utterly baffled by our capacity to care for non-sentient creatures simply because they're cute or loyal. He chuckled, and this time the sound was perfectly synchronized with his body. You should have seen them trying to understand why humans find cat videos entertaining. They built an entire simulated universe just to study the appeal of fluffy animals. Despite himself, Vander felt his alarm giving way to wonder. So the most powerful beings in existence want cultural exchange programs. Exactly, Rivera exclaimed. And that's why we've returned to Union space after all this time. The architects have a proposal for all sentient species, one that will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos. Galactic panic. News travels quickly in the Galactic Union. Epsilon 9 discovered it travels even faster when it concerns reality-bending technology, wielded by an unpredictable species with a documented history of territorial expansion. Within 36 hours of the Phoenix return, Epsilon 9 found itself surrounded by a fleet of warships from 17 different species. The station's long-range sensors showed additional battle groups in transit from the Union's core worlds. Diplomatic channels were flooded with panicked messages, stern warnings, and poorly concealed threats. Commander Vander stood in the primary communications hub, switching between channels with increasing frustration. Yes, Ambassador Claire, I understand your concerns, but he switched feeds. High Chancellor, with all due respect. Another switch. No, First Minister, the humans have not altered the gravitational constant.